Good morning, Steffi. Can you see us? Or good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon. Yes, all good now. Thank you.
Fabulous. And good afternoon, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us today. You should be able to change your mic, Sabrina, at the top of the view. You'll see mic and camera. Ah, perfect. There you go.
Here I am.
Thanks for joining us today. We're just waiting on Chair Leslie and Gillian Fraser to join us as well from the board, and then we'll get started. We've also got one other colleague that's going to come and join us who's a technical expert, but has just run away to get his headset. So that you're aware, we are all sitting in the same room at the moment, but chose not to use the room technology, otherwise you would never see our faces. So we're all on our own laptops with headsets on.
Claire, are you able to invite Lynn in? She's having difficulties accessing the link.
Ooh.
Joining.
Let me see if I can do anything at this end. Share invite. And I'll just send it to Leslie. And I've just sent her via email a link to join, so hopefully that works for her.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Thank
Also,
you.
to clarify, her first name is Lynn, surname
Sorry,
Leslie.
and I
Yes,
apologise.
all good. It happens.
It's been a busy day.
Totally fine. All good.
We'll just give her a couple of minutes, see if that works. Come in on the meeting. I have, and here she comes. Accept. Afternoon, Lynn. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you for letting me in there. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. I apologise for you not being able to get into the meeting.
Okay, I figured it out.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Some of you know me. My name is Claire Fletcher. I am the engagement advisor that's supporting the team on the local alcohol policy. We're a small group today, so we're determined to set this webinar up more like a meeting. So we'll have our cameras on. If you're comfortable with that, you are able to use the chat at the top of your screen. If you've got any questions you'd like us to answer, that just pop up as and when we talk through each of the options with you, and you can also raise your hand. We'll keep it that way today. Joining me today on your screen, you have Amy Martin, who is our research lead for the local policy development. Thomas Lee, or Tom, who is our policy lead, and Ron Lem, who's just joined us, is our legal counsel for this project, as it's very technical and a lot of things that we need to understand. Jane Harrison has just arrived, so I'm going to admit her. Good afternoon, Jane. I'm Claire. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Claire. Sorry about that. I didn't have a link. I had to call out to my teammates.
Not
I
a
didn't have
problem.
the Teams link. Yeah. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. For the purposes of Sabrina on the call and anyone else that may not know, Lynn and Jane, Steffi, Heather, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure, yes. Kia ora, everybody. My name is Lynn Leslie and I am the chair of the Banks Peninsula Community Board. I live in Wairewa.
And Jane? Jane might have frozen. Steffi or Heather, could you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, kia ora. My name's Steffi and I am Community Development Advisor for Akaroa and the Bays. And apologies, I will need to keep my camera off today.
Not a problem.
Hello, my name is Heather. I'm the support officer, and my camera is also off today because it's actually connected to my laptop, which is closed, and I don't have a camera on top of my screens.
Not a problem. Jane, can you hear us now? Are you still having technical issues?
No, I'm good. Yep, so I'm the CDA, Community Development Advisor for Wairewa.
Thank you, Jane. And Sabrina, would you like to share for my colleagues in my room here who you represent and what you work for and a bit about background about Naval Point?
Yeah, so I'm the manager of Naval Point Club Littleton. We're a club here in right around the corner from Magazine Bay. I'm here both as the manager. We do have a bar and kitchen, but I'm the new chair of the Littleton Harbor Business Association. So
Fabulous.
I'm just here to see if I can communicate back to our members anything that might affect, Eruption Brewery, Bombas, the Fresh Market, as well as other hopefully newer members of the association that around Diamond Harbor and Governor's Bay that we're trying to recruit.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sabrina. Great to have you here today, and I really hope that the rest of the group utilize your knowledge base today and considering some of these options. What we'd like to do is walk everyone through a quick presentation of what the research is telling us so far, and then the options that we are considering whether or not to put into a draft local alcohol policy, and the process that we've got to go through, and then have a discussion about those options. And I think there could be some great insight from Sabrina you might be able to bring to the table in terms of what the impact or consequences of those options may have on the Banks Peninsula community and businesses, to help inform how the board may like to provide feedback officially through this process as well. If you're up for that, that would be amazing.
Yep.
Great. So I'm going to share a presentation with you, and then I'm going to, first and foremost, we'll start with a karakia, if that's okay, but I'll share the presentation first because I do not know it by heart yet. And Linda is about to join us. Kia ora, Linda.
Kia ora.
While we wait for Linda, and can we also let Kathy Lum know she's waiting to sign in as well? So if someone could do that, that would be fantastic.
Certainly. Heather, could I ask you to do that? I can't seem to do it from my screen because I don't have her email address.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Lovely, thank you. Now, can you all see a presentation slide with local alcohol policy development on? Brilliant. So just to reiterate what we're going to cover today, we'll talk about the development process for a local alcohol policy as it's set out in the Sale and Supply of Liquor Act, which is the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, very prescriptive. We'll go over the research and engagement findings and then just have a discussion around the options that we're considering whether or not to include. To kick us off, here's our karakia. Please feel free to join in if you know it and are comfortable to do so. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e he aki ana te atakura, he taio, he huka, he hauhanga, tihei mōri ora. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Tom, who's going to walk us through what a local alcohol policy can do and can't do.
Excellent. Thanks, Claire. Welcome, everyone. So the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act sets out what can be included in an LAP. And an LAP sets out the rules and conditions about how alcohol can be sold and supplied in a district. An LAP supports the purpose of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, which is that the sale, supply and consumption of alcohol is undertaken safely and responsibly, and that alcohol-related harm is minimised. So an LAP can include policies on where licensed premises can be located. This includes any limits in particular areas or near or within certain types of facilities. Whether any new licenses or types of licenses can be issued in a district or any part of a district, restricting or extending the trading hours that are set out in the Act, and can include policies or any conditions on licenses or types of licenses that could be subject to, for instance, a one-way door condition. So an LAP may provide differently for different parts of the district and can apply also differently to different types of licensed premises. An LAP does not include some things too, which is the Act is very clear that an LAP must not include policies on any matters that don't relate to licensing. And it's not a substitute for other general alcohol harm reduction strategies or plans either. In practice, this means an LAP cannot directly provide for other matters such as controls on noise, for example, at live music venues, and there are other tools available for these sorts of things. And it also means that an LAP can't directly provide for a wider range of issues associated with alcohol-related harm other than those that relate to alcohol licensing. Briefly run through sort of how we've got here today for you. And so this isn't the first time that the council has begun developing a local alcohol policy, and some of you may remember or may have participated during the first attempt. So in 2013, the council tried to develop an LAP. But in those days, the process and the city situation were a little bit different. So, for example, our city's entertainment and hospitality venues were a bit more disconnected from each other post-earthquake, both within the city, and the venues became a little bit more spread out across in suburban areas as well. At that time, after developing a draft local alcohol policy for consultation, the council actually spent a number of years working through quite a lengthy appeals and judicial review process. So in 2017, work on an LAP was discontinued, and there was a decision the following year not to pursue an LAP at the time. However, in 2023, the situation changed a little bit, and the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act was amended. And the amendments removed the requirement for a council wanting to have an LAP to adopt a provisional version before it adopted a final version. And it also removed the right of other parties to appeal to ALA against any element of a provisional LAP. Also in that same year, the Supreme Court made a judgment on the Auckland local alcohol policy. So they also had a lengthy appeals and review process, but they stuck with it and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And in that case, between Woolworths and the Auckland Council, the court clarified that the policies in a local alcohol policy may be justified on the basis of a reasonable likelihood of reducing alcohol-related harm rather than having proof, and that LAPs may be based on or influenced by community preferences, which to that extent do not have to be evidence-based. So following these updates, we received some letters from our stakeholders such as the police and Te Whatu Ora requesting that we look at the process again. And in June 2024, councillors voted for staff to start this process again. This slide shows the high-level process for developing an LAP that we are working to, and the stage we're at now is the stage in the pink box. So in the second half of last year, we began engaging with some key stakeholders, and we developed our research report, which is available online if you would like to take a look on the council webpage to do with the local alcohol policy. That research report consists of data from the police and from the Medical Officer of Health, an analysis of other councils, some other councils' local alcohol policies, has an economic literature review, and also the analysis of results from the Life in Christchurch survey from over 5,000 respondents who answered questions around attitudes towards alcohol. We're currently in the options identification and testing stage. So council approved us to test the options that we're talking today about, and we're currently undertaking engagement on these at the moment. In April, we'll report back to the council on the engagement findings, and we'll also seek a council decision to consult on a draft LAP. Following that, we would then consult on that draft policy, which would be for 4 weeks. Following that, staff would develop some recommendations from the consultation, and the usual hearings process would take place. And then in July, would plan to seek a council decision to adopt a final local alcohol policy. So that's the process. I will now throw to Amy to talk a little bit about the research and engagement findings to date.
Hello.
So you'll remember that when we came to see you late last year, we went through the initial Life in Christchurch findings at a very early stage. We've now finished that, and I'm going to take you through the findings from the rest of the research report. So there were three main lessons that we learnt from the wider set of data in that report. And the first is that alcohol-related harm is affecting our communities. The second is it can be associated with both supervised and unsupervised drinking. And the third is that communities want more say on alcohol licensing. So I'll briefly run through the data behind all of those for you, but just note that what I'm talking about today is only a snapshot, and there's a lot more detail available in both the issues and options paper and the full research report online on the LAP website. So kicking into the first one, alcohol-related harm is affecting our communities, and the research report and the data in there revealed that some communities are affected more than others. So police data told us that about a third of the incidents, alcohol-related incidents that the police attend are in the east of the city, and then another third are split across both the central city and the central northwest of the city, which includes suburbs such as Riccarton, Maryvale, Papanui, and around that Northlands commercial centre. There were relatively few police incidents that they attended in Banks Peninsula. The Life in Christchurch survey told us that residents in Burwood, Central, Coastal, Linwood and the Riccarton wards were more likely to say that some or most of the various alcohol-related issues that we asked about occur frequently in their neighbourhoods. Our data tells us as well that those living in communities with higher levels of deprivation are disproportionately affected by alcohol-related harm. Nationally, quality of life survey data suggests that those experiencing alcohol-related harm are more likely to live in the most deprived areas of the city than in less deprived areas. And in Christchurch, the police attend more alcohol-related incidents in areas of higher deprivation than in less deprived areas. People in the most deprived areas of the city are also more likely to perceive alcohol and drug-related problems as a big problem than those in the least deprived areas. And the Life in Christchurch findings told us that those living in wards with higher levels of deprivation are more likely to experience alcohol-related harm in their area and have concerns about the various aspects of current alcohol licensing rules. Licensing data that we collected indicates that there are more on and off licensed premises in areas of high deprivation, and that generally they have earlier opening and closing times, so alcohol is available for a bigger proportion of the day. In our early engagement, we've heard that concerns about the concentration of premises in deprived areas and the effect that it can have on things like reducing the price of alcohol, increasing consumption in those areas. Moving through to the second one, alcohol-related harm may be associated with both supervised and unsupervised drinking. So in theory, the potential for harm is greater when alcohol is purchased from off-licensed premises where it's taken away to drink somewhere else rather than places where alcohol is bought and consumed on the premise. On-licensed premises are required to put in place measures to encourage the safe and responsible consumption of alcohol. But once alcohol has been purchased from an off-licence and taken away, there's really no controls or supervision of drinking once it's walked out those doors. Our early engagement with stakeholders again, such as the police and our licensing inspectors here at Council, suggests that most concerns are about the availability of alcohol off licences. However, there are indications that on-licensed premises may also be associated with alcohol-related harm in the city. The police data shows us that much alcohol-related harm occurs late at night in parts of the city where there's a concentration of hospitality venues, and the obvious example of that is the central city. And Life in Christchurch survey results suggest that some residents have concerns about harm associated with drinking in some kinds of licensed premises. So that tended to be our pubs, bars and nightclubs rather than the cafes and restaurants. And finally, communities told us that they wanted more say on alcohol licensing. So our Life in Christchurch survey told us clearly that residents want to have more say about licensed premises in their area. And we've also heard that communities feel like they have limited capacity at the moment to participate in that decision-making process around alcohol licence applications in their neighbourhoods. Where there is the most agreement on the need for restrictions is in terms of proximity to community facilities. So We heard really clearly in Life in Christchurch that 75% of the respondents think that such restrictions should apply to bottle stores, and that 65% think that there should be restrictions applied to pubs, bars and nightclubs. When we asked which community facilities those should apply to, people commonly identified early childhood education centres and schools, so both primary and secondary schools, and then medical and rehabilitation facilities and hospitals, and parks, playgrounds and sports facilities. Just a reminder now of some of the information that we provided you late last year, specifically for Banks Peninsula, and this comes from the Life in Christchurch survey. So in that survey, the majority of respondents from Banks Peninsula thought that actually there's around the right number of licensed premises in our local neighbourhoods at the moment. If they told us there was about the right number, we asked them whether they'd like to see more, and respondents in Banks Peninsula tended to be split between neither agreeing nor disagreeing. Across most premises types. While most of the premise types were close, there was a 50-50 split on restaurants and cafes, which is, again, we saw that consistently across the city, where restaurants and cafes are things that contribute to community and they're places for people to connect. And so we saw that pretty consistently across all of the board areas. Around a fifth of the respondents from that survey said that they'd like to see more in restaurants and cafes in their local neighbourhoods, while around half neither agreed nor disagreed. More than 2/3 of respondents thought that bottle stores, pubs, bars and nightclubs should have restrictions on how close they are to community facilities. So that's what I was just talking about before in the wider set. And again, they thought that they should apply to those same areas that we saw across the wider city results as well. And we received a mixture of feedback from Banks Peninsula residents about the hours of licensed premises in Life in Christchurch. And in the case of bottle stores, small grocery stores, convenience and specialty stores, and restaurants and cafes, respondents were split between the hours currently being about right or too long. In the case of pubs, bars and nightclubs and social and sports clubs, the majority thought at the moment that actually they are probably too long. And on the other hand, when we asked about supermarkets, the response we got from Banks Peninsula residents on that was actually they're about right at the moment. I will hand back now.
Great, thanks, Amy. So based on the broader issues that we identified that Amy discussed earlier, those three main categories, we developed 6 possible options that we want to test with the community. And it's just important to note that at this stage, these are possible options and they are not what staff are proposing as the LAP. So these are the options that we want to test with the community to better understand the community's views before we start drafting an LAP. So this current engagement will help us refine rule in, rule out options before we submit a draft LAP to the council for consultation. And it's possible that the council could choose to adopt all of these, some of these, or none of these options. We developed these options drawing on the tools available under the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act. We looked at other council's policies. We looked at the research based on the effectiveness of various LAP tools, and obviously the data and the research that we've collected that Amy just talked through. One final thing to note on these options is that the options aim to address different issues, and so there is no one single option here that would address all the issues that we've identified. So we can discuss each option. So first of all, we'll discuss option A and what we're actually calling option D. So it might sound funny to talk about these options next to each other, but we do know the alphabet and that's okay. But so options A and D both seek to restrict trading hours for off-license and on-licenses respectively. So the research suggests that reducing the consumption of alcohol is likely to result in a reduction of alcohol-related harm, and research also suggests that reducing trading hours can be an effective way of reducing alcohol-related harm. So option A is to reduce trading hours for off-licenses, and this would seek to restrict the accessibility of alcohol that can be purchased at off-licenses for consumption in an unsupervised environment at night. So this option wouldn't stop people from drinking alcohol that they'd bought earlier, but it would restrict people's ability to make decisions to purchase additional alcohol at night time when they may have already been drinking. There was some community support for reducing off-licence trading hours, although some of the views were mixed. If trading hours for off-licences were reduced, for example, to 9 p.m, licensing data indicates that most of the city's off-licence premises would be affected by this option. So currently only 54 of the 256 off-licence premises in the city or district hold licenses requiring them to close by 9 p.m. We considered targeting this option to some parts of the city or to only some types of off-licence premises, so for example just to bottle stores, but it is likely that we think it's likely people would just travel to other areas or buy alcohol from other places. So for these reasons, we're suggesting at this stage a consistent approach to all off-licence trading hours for all types of off-licence premises in all parts of the city. And this is a policy that is relatively common in other New Zealand towns and cities that do have a local alcohol policy. For example, councils such as Auckland, Selwyn, Gisborne have a 9 p.m. closing time for their off licences. Tauranga, Dunedin, the Waimakariri have 10 p.m. So that's option A, and option D is the other one around trading hours. So this is reducing trading hours for on licenses in suburban areas. So this option aims to reduce alcohol-related harm late at night in suburban areas, particularly where there is a concentration of on-licensed premises. So with this option, we're aiming to strike a balance between providing some vibrancy in suburban centres at night while also recognising and mitigating the risk of harm associated with alcohol availability in suburban areas. We considered applying this option also to the central city, but concluded that it would probably undermine the council's objectives for a vibrant central city and to provide for late night licensed premises in that area. As an example, reducing suburban on licenses to closing hours at 1 a.m. Our licensing data indicates, using that example, that 16% of on licenses outside of the city would be affected by this option. So again, there was some community support for reducing suburban trading hours, although once again, the views were a bit mixed. So those are the two options regarding trading hours.
Thanks, Tom. What we'll do now is we'll just pause there. Sorry, Tom was just turning his sound off so you don't get that feedback. We'd like to ask you as a group if you've got any thoughts or opinions around the impact to your local communities in Banks Peninsula that there might be, or questions that you might have for us around the impacts of reducing trading hours for your unlicensed venues within the commercial areas of Banks Peninsula, or of reducing the hours of your off-licensed premises and outlets right now. Are there any questions or any thoughts around those options?
I think it would be great to go to the community with these specific options and to hear. I mean, I know having something specific to discuss is a fantastic thing, and people will often have opinions about those. Yeah, the restricted hours. So I don't know how that. I just personally, this speaking from what I have seen, not for everybody on Banks Peninsula, I don't imagine that would affect many people that I know within my community. The on licenses potentially more so. You've got quite a vibrant nightlife in Littleton, and that potentially could affect people. But I'd be interested to hear what they actually had to say themselves. So yeah, no, it'll be good.
Anyone else have any thoughts right now?
Yeah, I think for the licenses in Littleton, it's not going to affect them because they're already at that 9 o'clock from the the two places that you can buy from. But for the on license, I'd have to go directly to places like Wonder Bar and Eruption and Nom Nom and Sherpa Kai and Super to see what their thoughts. And also, I'll be at the next community board Banks Peninsula meeting on March 10th. So it'll be interesting to get an idea from those people what they think.
Yeah, I think it's good to point out now that the online survey that is available through Let's Talk .ccc.govt/local alcohol policy. The survey there does ask the community to provide us some input into what hours they think would be appropriate if we were to reduce them rather than setting a specific time. And the reason we've done that is we really want to understand the level of comfort that the community and business owners would have if a reduction was put in place, like where's the parameters of what's comfortable for them. So it would be really interesting to understand from the local venues within Littleton and Akaroa, Banks Peninsula, what they thought was comfortable if it was to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just had a wee question.
Absolutely.
Hi. My question was about just data and things for input. So you talked about the stakeholders giving data and the police and council. Was that like complaints, or was it complaints from the community about various alcohol related issues happening in the community, particularly for Littleton? Or was it
Yep.
that brought a response back?
So we are actually legally required to go and ask the police for certain data when we're developing an LAP, which we did, and we work quite closely with them to get that data. So the main thing they provided us was where have they attended alcohol-related incidents in the past few years, and there's more detail on that in the research report. All of the data that they provided us has been provided in there. In terms of health, we also got some data from them on people that they've seen with alcohol-related sort of incidents in the A&E and things like that. So again, we had to go and ask health for that data, but also included in that research report is a range of information from the likes of Stats NZ that we hold here, that Life in Christchurch data, and yeah, it's about 160 pages long. So there's plenty of information in there. It's broken down by different sections. The licensing data that we have came from our licensing team, and that's just the information that we hold about licensees within Christchurch City. So our licensing district, and there was quite a bit of analysis done on that as well in terms of those opening and closing times and proximity to community facilities at the moment. So I encourage you to go and have a little look in the research report if you've got specific things that you're interested in.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm thinking about. Yeah, that's okay, Kathy. It's hard when you go on Zoom to know when someone's finished. I was thinking about just about young people. I think often the people that fill out our surveys and provide feedback are older adults. Obviously, you get lots of input from the business community and people who are concerned about disruptions and, issues around them. But I do hope that the engagement actively works on talking to young people, particularly in Littleton, I think. I like the idea of there being something blanket across the city, because otherwise people are just going to drive to get more alcohol and often intoxicated, and when they're on the peninsula they're driving long distances. But just to get a perspective from young people about what it would mean to them, I think would be really useful, just to make sure that we're not ignoring any extra harm that may be caused by people, particularly driving under the influence or being in, other neighbourhoods and, causing issues or whatever. So, yeah, I think it's really important we focus on young people, not just the usual survey and online and stuff, because that will get those same people that always respond.
Thanks, Jane. And I can say there that we were acutely aware that when we did our Life in Christchurch survey, we had quite a low response rate, which is normal for us, for young people. And so that was a target audience in this current early engagement. We actually were fortunate enough to work with the University of Canterbury Students Association. Right now, they're in their orientation week, or weeks, I should say. It runs over a couple, and they enabled us to get on campus and ask students what did they think of these ideas. I can say that at the moment, or as of yesterday, our total results were sitting at 13%, came in from people between the age of 18 and 24. So that's really encouraging for us that they are interacting with the survey and providing their opinion to us on each of the options that are being considered. But I do hear you that we could also do with help from you and from the board members and the community board advisory team to try and elicit more feedback from Littleton and Banks Peninsula youth as well. So if there are any other groups or contacts that you think that we should be contacting in this phase and in later phases of engagement, should we get there, please do let Heather and the team know, and they'll get those names through to me or those opportunities through to me so that we can consider how we connect with them. I'm going to move us on. We've got 20 minutes together.
Sorry, I'll just say one more thing. Possibly we might know of places where there will be a lot of young people there, because going to them is often an awful lot more productive than hoping they'll come to us. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks.
If there's anything like that, please do let us know. I'm always happy to pop in to a gathering like that as well. Yeah. I'm going to move us on. Tom, I'm going to ask you if you could go over the next two options. I'll just turn my sound off.
Great, thank you. So next option, option B, which is a temporary freeze on new licence applications in areas of high deprivation. So this would place a temporary freeze on licences being issued to new licensed premises. Existing licensed premises could renew their alcohol licence, and a licensed premise could change ownership and continue operating under this proposal. So, however, no new premises would be granted an alcohol licence while a freeze is in place. So this option seeks to address the disproportionate level of alcohol-related harm experienced by the higher deprivation communities, which Amy discussed earlier. It aims to prevent the further concentration of licensed premises in those areas, and then mitigate the effects that it can have on lowering prices and increasing access to alcohol. It wouldn't stop people from buying alcohol, but there would just be fewer places to buy alcohol from by removing that growth with new outlets. There appears to be some community support for this approach. Some stakeholders have expressed concerns about the proliferation of off-licences in high deprivation areas, and the Life in Christchurch survey results indicates some support for this. The freeze could apply to all or some types of licensed premises, and this is one of the points that we are testing with the community. The Life in Christchurch findings and our engagement with stakeholders suggest that probably some premises are more likely to be of concern than others to the community. And again, other councils have implemented similar measures as part of their LAPs before. So, for example, Tauranga doesn't allow any new licences for bottle stores in suburbs with a social deprivation index of 9 or 10. Auckland Council has placed a freeze on new off-licences in the city centre and in 23 other listed centres within the city. And New Plymouth has a freeze on new off-licence bottle stores in all of their areas. Here are some maps that show levels of deprivation. So I think there are two that we can look at here. So the rest of Banks Peninsula is that one, and previously there's Littleton and Rākaihautū there. So in comparison to the rest of the city, the deprivation mapping shows that there are probably, in comparison, less areas of the city or of the district that are considered high deprivation in Banks Peninsula. Currently, we are considering high deprivation similar to what the Tauranga Council has done in terms of levels 9 and 10 levels of deprivation and looking at those as the areas of the city that we focus on. Okay. The next option is option C, which is to restrict licensed premises from being located close to sensitive sites. So this option would restrict, again, new licensed premises from opening up within a certain distance of certain community facilities that are considered sensitive. So this option responds to the community preferences that Amy talked about around licensed premises not being located to sites such as schools. The list of community facilities that we are seeking feedback on are similar to those definitions of sensitive sites used by other councils and their LAPs. We have in our work suggested possibly a distance of 100 metres as a possible option, as we think it reflects a balance between being not too close to these sites, but also ensures that the restriction isn't too expansive. But this is one of the points that we're seeking community views on, is the distance. And as some context, it's other councils use usually distances of 50 to 150 metres who have this type of policy. So Dunedin, Timaru, New Plymouth all use 100 metres for their policies. Invercargill have a 50 metre policy, Gisborne 150 metres, just as some comparisons there.
Thanks, Tom. So again, it'd be interesting
I have a comment on that one. Yeah, sorry.
Go for it.
I'm just thinking about Little River, where I do a lot of work, and thinking about where there's a cluster of, the school is there, the play centre is there, there's the rugby club rooms, which have a bar, there's a community centre where they have, events with alcohol. They serve alcohol with the fire brigade, which is right there as well. Sometimes in small communities it's kind of all clustered together. And I guess my comment would be that having a blanket limitation like that, there may be a need to sometimes have a look at particular situations in small communities, and that's just one small community. There's probably others, and often in really small communities on the peninsula, they have it all in one building. They have a lot, their kids' activities and licensed activities and things going on in the one building, so it doesn't always apply to the smaller communities.
Yes, and something that you might like to consider in your feedback is that this proposal for restricting licensed premises from being located close to community sensitive community facilities is for new license applications or new licenses rather than existing ones. So that may provide a framework for your opinion around that. We're not.
Yeah, and what about temporary licenses?
That's something that needs to be considered further, whether or not it would apply to temporary licenses or special licenses for one-off events in existing venues, such as or like Naval Point, or any of the halls or the rugby groups that aren't operating using their existing license for that evening. That is something that needs to be considered further, and we would welcome feedback on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly?
I've got one. Sorry, just before we do there, I have my Ron, our legal counsel, would like to say something. So I'm just going to turn my mic off and let him jump in.
Just to clarify the matters around proximity, etc. We also have to remember that the licensing or district licensing committee is not required. It can make decisions that are inconsistent with the LAP in certain circumstances. That all they're required to do is have regard to it. So in these situations where you've got close communities, they can make dispensations or discretionary decisions.
It's good to know, thank you.
My mic off?
Question was just around the license and policy. Would it apply to like advertising as well? Or putting up billboards or signs close to, schools and centres like that, which would have that same sort of, I suppose, promoting alcohol in spaces where really we don't want to be.
The actual requirement for advertising is closely policed by the actual legislation, and it does cause some angst to the district licensing committee, and they do put conditions on those sorts of things in terms of licenses and billboards. So yeah, it normally has to be within the premises.
And just to clarify there, Ron, could we put provisions within a local alcohol policy in regards to advertising or not? Because is it directly related to the licensing itself?
We're restricted by the 6 or 7 requirements that the actual legislation refers to. So yeah, it would be a matter for the district licensing committee to decide.
Thank you, Ron. The other thing I'd just like to draw your attention to with the temporary freeze on new licence applications in high deprivation areas, at the moment we're considering that based upon a deprivation level of 9 or 10, and you'll notice in the next map that you have areas within the Banks Peninsula that come just under that in the decile areas of 7 and 8, Littleton being considered a 7 and Rapaki being considered an 8. It would be good to understand from your feedback and your perspective whether or not you thought decile 9 and 10 was enough, or if there was a desire to consider going to a lower decile number, and then the impact of that might have on your community in terms of that particular condition or that we're considering impacting. So that's just something to be aware of, that you have got a couple of communities that fall just underneath the threshold that's being suggested at this point in time. Are there any questions or further feedback around the consideration of a temporary freeze for licence applications in high deprivation areas, or the restriction of licensed premises from being located next to sensitive community sites? No, just a reminder, you can put questions in the chat as well if you're not comfortable speaking out or putting your hand up or turning your mic on, and that's all okay as well. I'm going to hand back to Tom now and ask him to talk you through the one of the 2 final options that we are considering as well.
Okay, thanks, Claire. So option E is a one-way door restriction. So under a one-way door restriction, people could not enter or re-enter any unlicensed premises after a certain time. So, for example, 2 a.m. at night. The rationale is to encourage people who are drinking late at night to stay within a licensed premises, and this provides a supervised environment where staff can monitor levels of intoxication and behaviour. Also, harm can be reduced that arises from intoxicated people moving between venues late at night, and limits some people from leaving a venue to top up their alcohol and then re-entering again, which was an issue mentioned to us by the police. Currently, this restriction is being considered, we would consider it to all premises that hold an on-licence or a club licence. And our licensing data indicates that 101 licensed premises would be affected by this option, mostly in the central city, but 38 in non-central city areas would be affected by this policy. Other councils do have one-way door policies. For instance, Dunedin have one at 2:30 a.m, Napier at 2 a.m, Gisborne 1 a.m, and Timaru have a 2 a.m. on Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And our final sort of option, so to speak, is what we're calling option F, which is other measures. So option F involves using other tools, tools other than a local alcohol policy, to try and reduce alcohol-related harm. So these other tools could be used instead of an LAP or also alongside an LAP. Other tools, examples of other tools could include things like community collaboration, so such as having an alcohol accord where parties might agree to work together to promote the safe consumption of alcohol. We have obviously things like alcohol bans already in place in parts of the city, and this, this prohibits consumption in public places and helps reduce certain elements of alcohol-related harm, such as litter and disorder. Or, for example, we could have education initiatives for the city about safe and responsible drinking. So there are other things outside of a local alcohol policy that we could potentially look into. And so we are seeking the community's views on whether some of these non-LAP options, whether the council should be considering these further.
Thanks, Tom. So again, if you've got any thoughts around the one-way door policy or other mechanisms that we could consider, we're happy to take some feedback now or answer any questions that you might have around them.
I've done a lot of research around looking at some of these issues in my past life, and especially with young people. I mean, the huge changes have been made in some other countries where they've recognised that one of the biggest things that young people need is stuff to do and to, you know, to keep themselves entertained and, yeah, and it's a real whole family type approach. You know, we talk about alcohol harm so often it's systemic and it's based in families, and it's about all, you know, part of the reason the low decile places have high levels of problems with alcohol harm and alcohol use is all of the other circumstances in their lives often. So, you know, focusing on young people, really supporting communities to provide really good activities, objectives for young people, finding out what it is that young people want and from their perspective, not just what we think young people might want. Steffi, you might have more to say on this as well. You know, really promoting and supporting all of those community initiatives that help to reduce family harm and help to reduce isolation, you know, especially on the peninsula, because isolation is a huge issue for farming people. Often they drive and they drink because they often don't have good outlets for the stuff that they're dealing with, and they'll drink and they'll drive, and you know, all of those things. It's a huge issue, alcohol harm, and but I do think just within what we do is, you know, working with communities as Volca Council around funding stuff that we know that has been shown to make a real difference, and programs that make a real difference, and for people working with communities to support and encourage any of those types of activities that might help reduce some of those harms or support families and support people within communities better. It's a big issue.
Thank you for sharing. It is a big issue, yes. Thank you for sharing those insights as well and those thoughts. It's definitely something that we can feed back into the process and consider. Kathy or Sabrina, were there any thoughts that you both had around the consideration of putting in place a one-way door policy for unlicensed venues, or using other measures to help with alcohol-related harm?
I think as a community, they would be in support of that concept. It's a small enough area that, and there's few of them. I think everyone would be in support of that late at night.
Okay. Another question that we're asking within the survey, if you pop in there, you'll notice we're actually asking what time do the community think that we should put one in place, rather than suggesting a time. At this currently, most venues can operate until 4 a.m. Well, that's the maximum trading hours for an unlicensed premise within the central city and in other suburban areas. So we are asking, like, if what would be an appropriate time to put one in place before closing. So it'd be good to get some feedback on that as well.
I wonder if you could have, because Port Noise is coming up, and that's one of the events when people stay out quite late, and that's kind of one of the exception nights where I think the community would be like, yeah, I'd stay open late. But that would be a nice weekend to get a snapshot of people's opinions. If there's some way you can get those people that are attending those events, that'd be the people that you would want to ask.
Mm-hmm. And what do you know what date that is?
Port Noise. I think
It's on Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday night?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because also it would be a nice group of people if you come out during the Saturday farmers markets, because that's a nice group of people that lived in Cass Bay and Corsair and Governor's Bay all could come to that. And I've seen some nice interaction between council asking about water treatment and the water health and things like that at those kinds of events.
Yep. Cool. Okay, brilliant. Did anyone else have any other thoughts or questions around those last two options we're considering? No? Well, we've got a few minutes left together, so there's an opportunity here to ask us any questions that you might like to ask us about anything to do with this project or any other mechanisms that could be considered. I'll just throw it out to everybody. Does anybody like to ask us anything? Lynn, you've got your hand up there. Feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the next steps are, I guess, in this engagement process, and where does it go to from here?
So the public engagement on this early phase of understanding is open until the 9th of March. So what we really do need is for as many people as possible to go online to letstalk.ccc.gov.nz/local alcohol policy and fill out the survey there, answering the questions on each of the considerations or each of the options we're considering. Once that is completed, the staff will then go and analyse all of the results and report back to council in April with a draft. I'm just going to scoot back some slides. Apologies for making you look at everything at the same time. Here we go. In April, then staff will report back to council asking for a decision on a draft for consultation based upon the feedback that we have received, and also report back on that feedback at the same time. Should the council approve us to consult on a draft policy and approve what's in that draft policy, we'll then look to go out to consultation probably around mid-April for 4 weeks using a special consultative process. That will then also provide for a hearings panel to be convened, and everybody that submits will be able to speak to the hearings panel about their submission. So the hearings panel will then deliberate in the end of June and make a final decision for council to, or it'll be, we've already asked for that panel to be a council of the whole, which means all of councillors that don't have a conflict of interest. So they would be on that hearings panel. They will make a decision, and that decision will be made at a council meeting later. And that meeting we expect to be in July. If it is adopted, in whatever shape or form that it ends up being, it would then become operative about 3 months later. Did that answer everything? Brilliant. Cool. Did anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We will close out with a karakia before we leave. But just before I do, just to reiterate, you've got opportunity at any time to send us questions that you may have after this session to letstalk@ccc.gov.nz, and we're happy to answer any of them. We'll also provide you with a copy of the video. You would have noticed that it was being recorded today. You'll receive a copy or a link to watch it, and we'll also provide you with the presentation slides that we used today. And yeah, ask us any questions that you might have. Please provide your feedback by the 9th of March, and I'm sure Lynn and the team will work together to determine whether or not the Community Board for Banks Peninsula will like to provide feedback as well. Lynn, did you want to say anything at the end as the chair?
Yeah, thank you to the team that's putting this together. I mean, engagement is so important about important issues just like this. So, and thank you for setting it up today. And I'm sure many people will watch this recording later on and be educated towards the issues. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn. And just to close out with our karakia, that come up? No, it did not. Bear with me, team. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Feel free to join in if you're comfortable. Unuhia, unuhia, inuhia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nakau, te tinana, te wairua, I te aratakata. Koe rā e rongo, whakarea aki ki runga, ki tina, huie taiki e. Thank you everyone for your time again today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Clea.
you.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.